Alrighty, now we're going to look at working across the front of the foot and down over the top of the foot a little bit. So we need to find the edges that we want to use for that. And as we look in here a little bit closer, we're going to see that we get a bit of a divot going on here in the front of the shin. So we're going to round that out a bit and look at maybe sliding some of these extra edges forward a little to help make that feel a little bit smoother and more rounded there in the front of the shin. So even though that's probably not exactly what we want to do, it's better. So we're going to grab a few edges here. Let's see, we'll grab one more there, and we're going to start bringing those down across the front of the foot. So as I move those down, I'm also going to start rotating them to follow the curvature of the foot. So there's no absolute to how far I'm moving or how far I'm rotating. I want to think about this basically staying kind of what I guess would be parallel to the structure of the foot. So now as we look from the front, we definitely see that we're a little shifted off to one side as well as a bit too narrow. So we're going to move that over using some soft selection. So we move everything back up into the ankle there. So we're going to slide that over a little bit, and then we're going to scale it out a little bit. And that actually looks a lot better, but before we finish with that, we're going to use our edge constraint and we're going to move some of these over a little bit. Again, to help kind of spread everything out and even out the structure of those polys. I want a nice kind of uniform flow through the geometry. And as we get down into the toes, we're going to see that life will be a little bit easier if we actually have some kind of uniform structure going on here. So again, I'm not too worried about anything being perfect. There is no such thing. But I do want some overall kind of accuracy within that structure. Now, the big toe being thicker is definitely going to be up higher. And until we get a little farther along, it's going to be hard to tell exactly whether or not that's correct. So we'll leave that there for now, and we'll move on to the side of the ankle. And we're going to start just dragging these down. We've got to turn off our edge constraint. Need to grab just these two edges. Start shift dragging those down. And then looking at both scaling them in and flattening them out a bit. So now I'm going to take a couple vertices here, well, actually this one, and we're going to move it back into the mesh a little bit farther. We're going to grab the one at the back edge, move it out a little bit more. And then as we shift drag down, we'll have a little bit more control over where that ankle bone is going to sit. So bring that down a little bit farther, start bringing it in a little bit. The inside of the ankle, the bone is up higher than it is on the outside of the ankle. So I also want to start looking at bringing these down and adjusting kind of the flow through here. Now, there's not a whole lot that I can actually follow since I can't see that side and I don't have a reference image for the inside of the ankle directly. What I am doing is actually looking at the physical reference model to see as much as I can about where all of that is going to flow. So because I don't have reference photos for that, a lot of this at this point is going to be just kind of feeling your way through it more than anything. So there are going to be things where we don't have absolute reference and we just kind of have to wing it to do the best that we can. So at this point now, we want to definitely start scaling this a little bit flatter in both directions. And then we'll move that back out to the side of the foot there a little bit more. We'll bring it down. We'll bring it down one more time. And we'll leave it right about there. So that should actually be tucked back in a little bit more right here. But I think it's about right. So we're going to drag these down a little here and kind of spread things out a little bit more. So we have a little bit bigger step underneath that ankle. And then we want to look at bringing like the point of that ankle out and down a little bit to help define that ridge a little bit more. And really overall, that looks like it's in a pretty good spot. So until we get a little farther along, it's going to be hard to say whether or not that's exactly where we want it. So now, in order to kind of fill in a little bit, we're going to look at where we can bridge to create the rest of the volume that we want. So we would end up having a 1, 2, 3, 4 if we end up with a single segment there. So by adding just a single segment right there, let's make that full screen, I can now cap this opening, and I've got 4 edges, so I can cap that opening and have a nice, well, not all that nice, but it is a quad. So the important thing is that we're looking for quads, not that necessarily absolutely everything we do stays quads. There are definitely times within the foot where having a non-uniform polygon isn't really a bad thing. All it could possibly do to our geometry is make it so that things don't necessarily flow absolutely perfectly. But if we think about the structure of the human foot, there's not a whole lot about it that's absolutely smooth and perfect. So if we end up in spots on the foot with having an odd little polygon here and there, it really shouldn't be a big deal. So now as we continue to look around, we're always looking for how we can complete the structure. So now we go to the other side of the ankle, and because we've got more geometry here, we're going to end up bringing a little bit more geometry down to create that inner ankle bone.